Applications across.
Good evening and welcome to our annual town meeting for May 5th, 2025. It is being broadcast live on Sandwich Community Television. Please welcome Boy Scout Troop 47 as they present the colors and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Boy Scout Troop 47. Well, you can't say it's scripted. Thank you very much. I now welcome two members of Sandwich High School's award-winning vocal group, Sandwich Soul, Brendan Cronin and Daytona Pearson, to perform the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Please welcome Father Jack Schrader from Corpus Christi to give the invocation.
From the wisdom of Solomon. For wisdom the fashioner of all things taught me. For in her there is a spirit that is intelligent, holy, unique, manifold, subtle, mobile, clear, unpolluted, distinct, invulnerable, loving the good, keen, irresistible, beneficent, humane, steadfast, sure, free from anxiety, all-powerful, overseeing all and penetrating through all spirits that are intelligent and pure and most subtle. For wisdom is more mobile than any motion. Because of her pureness, she pervades and penetrates all things. For she is a breath of the power of God and a pure emanation of the glory of the Almighty. Therefore nothing defiled gains entrance into her. For she is a reflection of eternal light, a spotless mirror of the working of God, and an image of his goodness. Though she is but one, she can do all things, and while remaining in herself, she renews all things. In every generation she passes into holy souls and makes them friends of God and prophets. For God loves nothing so much as the man who lives with wisdom. For she is more beautiful than the sun and excels every constellation of the stars. Compared with the light, she is found to be superior, for it is succeeded by the night. But against wisdom, evil does not prevail. She reaches mightily from one end of the earth to the other, and she orders all things well. We ask wisdom from on high to be with us at this town meeting, to guide every word, action, and decision. Amen.
In our current practice of local participatory democracy, we maintain and renew a tradition of self-governance practiced for 400 years. By gathering together today, we honor and embrace the town meetings of 250 years ago. They were the local democracies that by their nature taught Americans the virtues and responsibilities of self-government. It was through the conduct of town meetings that the colonial American public embraced the inalienable right of self-determination, independent of the British Empire's control, which in turn sparked a revolt and fueled the revolution. The voices then raised, actions taken, financial support committed, and lives and liberties pledged at many town meetings in the Commonwealth remain our worthy heritage. Tonight, I encourage you to speak your mind. However, when you do come up to speak, keep it clear, concise, and on topic. Be respectful, avoid inflammatory rhetoric and redundancy. There are limits of 5 minutes for your initial statement and 2 minutes for any follow-up. There is a timer visible for you to keep track of how long you are speaking for, and our time clerk will be keeping me informed as well. Our voting will be strictly electronic, and we will go through a sample vote in just a moment. On page 28 of your warrant is a QR code to our town meeting reference guide. This will go over motions and many of the frequently asked questions about town meeting. And Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Just wanted to give a quick lesson for those of you who haven't used the clickers yet. When you were signed in, you were given a clicker. On each clicker, there is a green yes button and a red no button. Pretty simple. They are asleep right now unless you press a button. If you press the button, you'll see they'll answer. No will put 2 on your screen, and yes will put 1 on your screen. That means they're active. They will fall asleep after a few minutes just to save battery. In the case of a vote, you're going to press yes or no when the moderator calls. We'll leave the vote open for 30 seconds. You're actually, I can see 111 of you have already voted. I'm going to scroll through here, so just test your clicker. I'm going to
vote early and often.
Yeah, I'm going to do the question is, do you like ice cream? So it's pretty simple. So if you look through here, I'm going to scroll down, and you're going to see your clicker number on your back, in the back of your clicker. We haven't issued more than I think 400 tonight, but you'll see your clickers are registering, just as an example here. So when the moderator calls for a vote, like I said, the vote will remain open for about 30 seconds. We'll time it. At the time, the moderator will give a quick heads up that there's 5 seconds left or so, and then we will stop the count and we will show the vote on the screen. Does anyone have any questions? If you change your mind, if you're pressing yes, as long as you're pressing the last button you press during that 30 seconds will be your vote. So you can go to yes to no in 30 seconds as long as the last vote you press is the one that you want. Do I have any more questions? That's a good one, though. No, that's not showing yes or no. It's just showing that the vote has registered. Yep. So if you're okay with that, I'll end this.
Can we turn off the moderator's microphone so that he's as loud as Taylor?
I will speak louder.
All right, is everyone comfortable with how these operate? All right. I'll turn it back over to the moderator. Thank you.
All right, and with that, Article 1, Report of the Town Officials and Long Range Plan Overview.
Move that the town accept the report. Move that the town accept.
Only Charlie, sorry, Charlie.
That's all right. We'll share a mic, but. Move that the town accept the report of all town officers and committees as printed in the 2024 annual town reports, and to hear the report to the Select Board on fiscal year 2026 long-range plan.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Just for a quick overview, this article accepts the annual town reports as printed, and it also references the Select Board's long-range plan for this upcoming fiscal year, which is printed in its entirety in the back of the warrant starting on page 35. Just to touch on a few of the bigger picture highlights for FY26, one includes implementing some long-term operational needs with ways to fund them for the foreseeable future, with particular focus on public road and infrastructure improvements. And another, which we've talked about at many town meetings, is further progress on our long-term wastewater implementation efforts, with the most important being addressing the wastewater treatment systems at all 3 Sandwich public schools. That will start taking place this summer, seeking state legislative approval for the special act that voters approved at a special town meeting in November 2022, and determining how best to implement our phase 1 of our comprehensive water resources management plan. Thank you.
Do we accept the report of the town officials? All in favor? Voting is open. Five seconds. Voting is closed. And the motion passes. Article 2, FY26 Budget.
Move that the town hear the report of the Finance Committee and raise and appropriate $93,295,403. Transfer and appropriate $3,084,857 from free cash. Transfer and appropriate $53,500 from the Sandwich Marina Enterprise Fund. Transfer and appropriate $20,000 from the Sandwich Hollows Golf Club Enterprise Fund. Transfer and appropriate $20,000 from the Department of Public Works Sanitation Division Enterprise Fund. Transfer and appropriate $10,000 from the Wasteways Fund. Transfer $85,000 from the Opioid Settlement Fund as approved by the Select Board. Transfer and appropriate $2,150,000 from the Ambulance Fund receipts reserved for appropriation account. Transfer and appropriate $20,000 from the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund. Transfer and appropriate $40,000 from Library State Aid. Transfer and appropriate $75,000 from the Western Fund. Transfer and appropriate $397,352 from beach parking receipts reserved for appropriation account. Transfer and appropriate $50,000 from cemetery trust funds. Transfer and appropriate $27,000 from the Hoxie House, from the Hoxie House grist bill receipts reserved for appropriation account. And transfer and appropriate $200,000 from the In Good Health donation account to defray town expenses for the fiscal year 2026 as itemized in the third column of fiscal year 2026 recommended appropriation as printed in the warrant under Article 2. and set the compensation of elected officials as follows. Moderator, $500. Chairman of the Select Board, $7,000. Select Board, for each, $3,500. Chair of the Board of Assessors, $2,000. Assessors, 2 each, $1,500. Town Clerk, $104,490.
Second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Ed, sorry.
Good evening and welcome to the Town of Sandwich Annual Town Meeting for 2025. I'm Ed Colopy, Chair of the Finance Committee, and along with 8 of other fellow neighbors and residents, we're pleased to have represented you in discussions that have helped form our recommendations for a number of articles before town meeting this evening. During our meetings this budget season, we provided 2 opportunities for public comment. We are appreciative of those who spoke with us, and I hope more of you will let your voices be heard as we go forward. It is one of your opportunities to formally speak up. Our town report can be found in the warrant document beginning on page 4, and here are a couple of highlights we considered throughout the budget planning process over the past few months. This year, 2 versions of the fiscal 2026 budget were presented to the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee. The Selectmen opted to move forward with the optimal outcome budget, which significantly increases the Department of Public Works budget by $560,000. The Finance Committee, facing that choice, was provided in response to our inquiries with supporting data regarding the DPW's public infrastructure plans and goals, along with other backup details. Also, recognizing our schools and the associated administrative support takes up 60% of the town's operating budget, along with the school department and school committee outlining a 3.36% increase, or close to $1.1 million, for a total budget of over $40 million. The Finance Committee asked the school superintendent to attend 2 of our budget review meetings. We asked many questions and requested backup materials on topics including enrollment declines, opportunities with digital curriculum material, and a new transportation contract, along with the effect and plans that could result from a possible lack of grants and other funding. Maintenance has been a long and ongoing concern that the Finance Committee has expressed for a number of years. Although the town has increased the Maintenance Department's operating budget this year, the line items for maintenance in the capital budget, for example, remain status quo and continue as an ongoing concern, given an ongoing deferred maintenance approach as seen throughout the budget. The Finance Committee also took time over the past few months and will continue to look ahead at major projects on the horizon, especially in light of and since our last Finance Committee meeting, where recent comments from our town manager, Bud Durham, on the uncertainty of state funding for joint-base Cape Cod wastewater infrastructure, and the school superintendent's interview highlighting the need for major investments. We also recognize, on balance, the need to ensure our budgets are sustainable, given we have been advised by the town manager that the use of excess levy capacity will increase over time, and that employee-related costs represent 71% of the Proposition 2.5% increase for fiscal 26. With those highlights, the Finance Committee, on a vote of 6 yes and 2 no, recommends passage of Article 2.
Bud?
The FY26 budget being recommended tonight is very safe in terms of our revenue projections, estimated local receipts, capital budget, and operating budgets. Through a conscious effort to mitigate tax increases while still providing improved public services, it has been balanced well below our allowed limit. Local government remains the only level of government requiring a balanced budget, and even in uncertain times, Sandwich remains in excellent financial condition. On pages 6 and 7 of the warrant, there is a detailed description of the budget by departmental account, and on page 44, you will see a one-page summary of the total general fund FY26 budget. The budget summary from page 44 is being projected on the wall. The Finance Committee budget message provides an excellent highlight of some of the primary issues we focused on over the last few years, and especially the last 6 months leading up to tonight. In addition to these remarks, there are some key points that should be highlighted about the recommended FY26 budget. Overall funding. The overall FY26 funding being recommended in all financial articles tonight equates to a 2.73% increase over the FY25 budget approved last May, which is well within our tax levy limit. When converted to an impact on the average homeowner's tax bill for a home assessed at $717,300, this equates to an increase of $266 for the upcoming year, or $37 for every $100,000 in home valuation. This is the projected impact for all the financial articles recommended tonight, not just Article 2. In fact, all the other financial articles on the warrant after Article 2 are funded from sources other than taxes. Operating budgets. The school in town started the budget submission process with what equated to level service operations. For FY26, the Select Board and Finance Committee supported some additional services in the general government budget to make us more efficient and keep up with current community needs. This multi-year plan has been worked on for many years with special focus the last 2 fiscal years. Some of the highlights of what's been added to the FY26 budget include an additional $560,000 for DPW public road and infrastructure improvements. This will allow the town to reach its long-stated goal of spending at least $2.6 million annually in state and local funding on road and drainage improvements. Moderate increases for additional focus on building repairs and maintenance, IT enhancements, and improved library services and operations. Increases to address rising cost centers like vehicle replacements and the police, fire, and DPW operating budgets are also included. Importantly, general government operating budget projections for the next several years show very straightforward level service budget requests with some significant savings forthcoming when regional dispatch operations commence and some debt funding inside Proposition is fully paid. Stabilization Fund and OPEB Trust Fund. The recommended FY26 budget makes an appropriation for the 11th straight fiscal year to both the Stabilization Fund and the OPEB Trust Fund, a very positive financial sign that we are increasing our emergency reserves and addressing future costs of retirees. Our hope is that by continuing to increase these balances, municipal bond rating agencies may raise our bond rating, thereby lowering future debt costs as we get ready to implement our wastewater requirements and address some additional building needs. The capital budget and other services. Significantly, we are focusing more than $3.5 million on capital and special articles recommended tonight. We are funding these improvements from existing sources like our free cash certification, the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund, and our enterprise and community preservation funds. Even though Article 2 focuses on our overall general fund budget for the upcoming fiscal year, there are some larger required capital projects that will likely need to be submitted to voters for future consideration through debt exclusion requests once approved by the Select Board. These include a new DPW facility and downtown fire substation located at the current DPW site on Route 130, future building maintenance and improvement projects at our 3 public schools, and addressing long-term wastewater requirements. These needs are multi-year efforts and are currently being analyzed and will be presented to the public once additional information is known, some several years from now. The size and scope of these projects cannot be addressed within our levy limit or our operating budgets and are excellent examples of why debt exclusion ballot questions and the extensive corresponding public review and approval process exist. Again, none of these larger picture capital needs are before us tonight or are part of Article 2. Excess levy capacity. We are presenting a balanced budget that does not use more than $3.1 million in excess tax levy capacity that the town could ask voters to fund within our Proposition 2.5 levy limit. A caveat on state aid and assessments. At every annual town meeting, we point out that we are voting our projected state funding amounts that will not be finalized until July or later. In preparing the recommended FY26 budget, we have been very conservative in our revenue assumptions and careful with our estimated expenses. So based on what the governor and House have told us, we believe the vote being recommended this evening is very safe and will actually have a significant positive balance when state receipts and assessments are finalized later this summer. Again, the total recommended FY26 budget, including what is recommended in all the additional financial articles being voted on tonight, leads to a total estimated tax bill increase of $266 over what was voted in May for FY25. It's important to remember Sandwich is in far better financial shape than most other municipalities. Our municipal bond rating remains at a strong AA+ rating, reflecting 2 levels of increase over the last decade, which is a positive reflection of our strong financial management practices and recent investment and progress in long-delayed infrastructure improvements. We've also made our most recent override last 21 years when our initial goal was to make it last 3 years. Cape-wide, over those same 2 decades, the other 14 towns have asked for just over 100 overrides, or an average of 7 per town. Sandwich has asked for none. If you have any questions about specific portions of the general government budget, the select board, the town department heads, and I are here to answer them. School representatives are here as well for any questions about the school budget. Finally, the motion for the budget article is one of the more confusing ones of the evening. The reason for this is we have to identify the various transfers that come from several other accounts other than taxes to help fund operating budgets and reduce costs. If you look on page 7 of the warrant, in the middle of the page you will see a list of interfund transfers. That was the list that made up the transfers that are included in the lengthy motion for Article 2. Thank you for listening, and especially for your strong support over the last several years, helping us accomplish some extremely important projects and funding efforts that staff and local boards and committees have literally worked on for decades. Sandwich is such a unique and a special community because of your cooperative spirit, support, and desire to move the town forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Bud. Do we have any discussion on the motion, on the article, rather? Please step up to the center podium and state your name and address.
Elaine Bufaro, 19 Woodridge Road. And I just have a couple of questions. If we're taking so much out of free cash, what's the percentage left in free cash?
Yeah, free cash is certified every year, so we're using it all for different things. Most of it is going towards the capital budget. There's some that's going for the additional public road infrastructure improvements, which we had a choice of either spending it with capital funds or with operating, and we decided to use operating.
Okay, so we go down to a 0 free cash.
That's right.
This year.
Yep.
Okay, and then second, the motion to pass from the Finance Committee was 3-2. Why the other two, the 2 vote was against the pass of the financial budget?
The vote was 6-2.
6-2, sorry.
No
All right.
problem. And I was not one of the 2, and I would say it was just a general feeling around sustainability of the budget and feedback that the members had discerned throughout the process. from hearing from department heads and where the budget was headed and what they heard also from residents.
Okay, and the second person you declined?
That was just in general from both.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, I will open the voting. If you support, press yes. If you oppose, press no. We have 5 seconds. Voting is closed. The article passes. Article 3, FY26 Enterprise Fund Operating Budgets.
Move that the town establish the FY26 Enterprise Fund budgets to be expended under the direction of the Board of Selectmen for the Cable, Public Access, Department of Public Works, Sanitation Division, Sandwich Hollows Golf Club, Sandwich Marina, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Section 44, subsection 53F half, and the following list. Cable Public Access, transfer and appropriate $517,000 from the Cable Public Access receipts. DPW Sanitation Division, transfer and appropriate $1,078,932 from the DPW Sanitation Division receipts, and raise and appropriate $60,500. Sandwich Hollows Golf Club, transfer and appropriate $1,499,373 from the Golf Department receipts, and $240,000 from the Golf Enterprise Fund retained earnings. Sandwich Marina, transfer and appropriate $2,335,890 from the Sandwich East Boat Basin Marina receipts.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Oh, Ed. Oh, Crystal, sorry about that.
On Article 3, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends passage of Article 3.
Now, do we have any discussion? Seeing none, we'll open the voting. Yes for supporting, no for opposed. Five seconds. Voting is closed. Motion passes. Article 4, FY26 Revolving Fund Appropriation Limits.
Move that the town set the spending limit for all town and school departments revolving funds for fiscal year 2026 as printed in the warrant under Article 4.
Second.
Jim?
The Finance Committee unanimously supports this article.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. 5 seconds. Voting is closed. Motion passes. Article 5, Capital Budget.
Move that the town hear the report of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee and transfer and appropriate $1,143,709 from free cash. Transfer and appropriate from, transfer and appropriate from $252,500 from the Gulf Enterprise Fund retained earnings, and transfer and appropriate $161,000 from the Marina Enterprise Fund retained earnings to be expended under the direction of the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of purchasing and repairing equipment, vehicles, and buildings, and providing related services as printed in the warrant under Article number 5.
Second.
So Brian here to speak. Brian Greer.
Yep, Brian Greer, Chair of the CIPC. The Capital Improvement Planning Committee held public meetings on February 10th and March 17th, 2025, to review the requests of the capital funding and other one-time expenses. The items included in Article 5 are recommended to support town and school needs. The CIPC recommends the FY 2026 capital plan and other expenditures as presented on page 10 of your town meeting warrant. Thank you.
Jackie?
The Finance Committee, on a vote of 6 yes and 2 no, recommends passage of Article 5.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. Five seconds remaining. Voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 6, Chapter 90, State Aid to Highways Program.
Move that the town appropriate the sum of money received or to be received from the Chapter 90 State Aid to Highways Program for highway construction and/or maintenance on any state-approved road during fiscal year 26.
Second.
Good.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends passage of Article 6.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. Five seconds remaining. Voting is closed. Motion passes. Article 7, School Department Cellular Lease Transfer and Appropriation of Funds.
Article 7, move that the town transfer and appropriate $34,618 to be expended under the direction of the school committee from the Sandwich High School cellular antenna lease receipt reserved for appropriation account under Chapter 154 of the Acts of 2009 for the purpose of the maintenance and improvement of exterior athletic fields and facilities at Sandwich Middle High School.
Second.
Crystal?
The Finance Committee votes on a 6 yes, 2 no votes passage on this article.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I will once again open the voting. Oops. Oh. Oh. All right, we will open the voting. 5 seconds. Voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 8, Beach Renourishment Account Appropriation.
Move that the town transfer and appropriate $80,196 from the beach renourishment receipts reserved for appropriation account as established in the 2013 annual town meeting under Article 23 to be expended under the direction of the Select Board for the purpose of funding future public ocean, beach, and dune renourishment projects.
Second.
Jim.
The Finance Committee unanimously passes this article.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on the article? Please state your name and address.
Chris Thompson, 40 Route 130. Are we to assume this is going to be the same type of renourishment that hasn't worked every time now?
That one's tough to answer. Mother Nature usually wins. There was a vote taken by town meeting more than a decade ago, and it requires us to set aside 20% of all the beach parking receipts that we receive, and to bring it back to town meeting the following year to have that appropriated to help towards those efforts. It's not anywhere near enough money to do any major renourishment. What we use it for is beach grass plantings. Sometimes we have to do work when after storms, stairs are damaged, things like that. So it's for much smaller type work, not the large reconstruction.
Are we looking at what other places with beach erosion are doing that has worked?
Yeah, believe it or not, Sandwich has been on the cutting edge of getting permits that most other communities in the state haven't been able to receive.
I'm thinking out of the state.
The state is very restrictive on what we're allowed to do.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. We will not open the voting.
Hi, Tracy Fisher, 10 Solomon Pond Road. So if we're using 20% of the money collected for this project, where does the rest of the money go?
Yeah, the vast majority gets voted. It was in the motion for Article 2. If you look on page 7, those interfund transfers, it says beach parking account. I think it was over 300,000. It funds all the lifeguards, the parking attendants, services in the rec department.
So it's beyond just the beaches.
Yeah, but it's all beach services that the rec department provides. Yep.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on the motion, the warrant?
My name's Emery Haskell. I live at 1 Firefly Lane. I'm a retired attorney from FEMA. And I'm here to tell you that one of the biggest issues that happens in seaside communities that become impacted by failure to maintain a program of nourishment of dunes and the like is when a community submits a claim for reimbursement for those costs. Typically they're denied. And the reason they're denied is because there's no record to support that there's been a program in place to sustain it. So just on the basis of that alone, this is a good investment for the community.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. Five seconds remaining. And the voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 9, Sandwich Promotions Fund Appropriations.
Move that the town transfer and appropriate $150,615 to be... Okay, let's try again. Move that the town transfer and appropriate $150,615 to be expended under the direction of the Select Board for the purpose of funding the fiscal year 2026 Sandwich Promotions Fund as established under Chapter 313 of the Acts of 2020 as printed in the warrant under Article 12.
Second.
Jackie.
The Finance Committee, on a vote of 7 yes, 1 no, recommends passage of Article 9.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. Five seconds remaining. Voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 10, Appropriation of Whiff Balance for Wastewater Purposes.
Move that the town transfer and appropriate $750,000 from the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund to be expended under the direction of the Select Board for the purpose of further implementing the town's comprehensive water resources management plan as it relates to wastewater planning, design, construction, implementation, and infrastructure, including all uses allowed under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, subsection 39M.
Second.
Ed.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends passage of Article 10.
Thank you.
Point of information, Jan Zarnetsky, 8 Chadwell Avenue. Several times, not this time, but several other times, what was read is not what's printed in our warrant, nor what appeared on the screen. What does that, what's the importance of that?
It's the motion that's read is the valid one. If you look at the way articles are written in the warrant, it's written a certain way to give flexibility. It's the motion that locks in the details. There were a couple of typos that we recommended. There was one that said FY25. We caught that last Thursday, so we changed it in time for what was read to be 26.
Okay,
so
thank you.
There were like 1 or 2 things that we found that I made a mistake when I did it.
Yeah,
So,
I noticed
yeah.
the difference in the fiscal years
Yeah.
and wondered. Thank you.
So, any discussion on Article 10? Seeing none, I will open the voting. There are 5 seconds remaining. Voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 11, CPA Fund, Administrative Costs, 10% Allocations, and Debt Payment.
Moves that the town hear and act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee on the fiscal year 26 Community Preservation Budget, and to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund fiscal year 26 estimated annual revenues the sum of $75,000 to be expended under the direction of the Board of Selectmen to meet the administrative expenses and all other necessary and proper expenses. The of the Community Preservation Committee for fiscal year 26, and further reserve for the future appropriation for the fiscal year 2026 Community Preservation Fund estimated annual revenues the following sums of $190,932 for open space purposes, $190,932 for historic resources purposes, and $190,932 for community housing purposes, and further transfer and appropriate $529,975 for the Community Preservation Fund, undesignated fund before fund balance for debt payments.
Second.
Crystal.
The Finance Committee, on a vote of 7 yes, 1 no, recommends passage of Article 11.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 11? Seeing none, I will open the voting. And just remember, green is to vote yes, red is to vote no. Five seconds left. Voting is closed. Motion passes. Article 12, CPA Historic Resources Project, Town Hall Restoration.
Move that the town transfer and appropriate $1,029,690 from the Community Preservation Act Historic Resources Reserved and $170,310 from the Community Preservation Act undesignated fund balance to be expended under the direction of the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of preserving, restoring, and making recommended repairs, improvements to the Sandwich Town Hall located at 130 Main Street as printed in the warrant under Article 12.
Second.
Jim.
The Finance Committee voted 6-2 in favor.
Thank you. I see we have discussion.
Hi, good evening, Matt Schimmel. I am the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. The committee discussed this application at its February 2025 meeting and voted to unanimously support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob King, and I live on Summer Street in the heart of one of the most beautiful, well-preserved, historically significant, quintessential New England villages in America. I stand in support of Article 12 and hope that voters this evening will join me in choosing to finish the preservation work on our stunning old town hall. I arrived in Sandwich as a young man of 25 in 1982 to purchase Marshland Restaurant and to make Sandwich my forever home. Over the last 43 years, I went on to own and operate 4 other remarkably successful small businesses. I also served on the Visitor Services Board for 10 years, the Planning Board for 10 years. I was the president of the Thornton Burgess Society Board for 7 years, the Town Hall Preservation Trust, and the Community Preservation Committee for the last 12 years, where we unanimously approved the expenditure approved this expenditure at our last meeting. I was also a docent tour guide at the Grist Mill last summer and recently joined the Sandwich Historic Commission. I do not bring up these experiences to pat myself on the back, but to illustrate that I think I can speak with some authority about what is largely responsible for driving our local economy. I remember the director of the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism being asked at a tourism summit years ago, quote, "What brings the typical visitor to Massachusetts?" Her answer was, quote, "They are seeking the authentic American experience." The novelty of being the oldest town on Cape Cod, settled just 17 years after the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth, along with the establishment of a glass factory 200 years ago in such a small, remote agrarian community, has meant that our town can deliver that purely American experience in spades. The amazing collection of architecture, the proliferation of Americana museums, and our natural beauty is what drives our local economy. A recent article from the March 31st Cape Cod Times entitled, "How Much Does Travel Tourism Drive Economy?" states, and I quote, "In 2023, visitors spent $23.6 billion in Massachusetts, generating more than 154,000 jobs statewide and $2.3 billion in state and local taxes." The CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber went on to give numbers that emphasized the importance of tourism to Cape Cod's overall economy. Direct visitor spending on the Cape in 2023 was $2.7 billion. More than 14,000 people were employed in tourist-related industries, and $163 million in state and local taxes were collected. Nearly 45% of restaurant revenues come from visitors. Visitor spending accounted for 36% of retail revenues and 47% of money spent on local businesses. These are big numbers, he said. Kate Fox, the present executive director of the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, called the Cape a powerhouse for the industry. Our Old Town Hall is one of the jewels in the crown of our historic district's architecture. It is not just a building, it is a historic artifact. Over the years, I cannot possibly say how many times I have heard visitors explain their reasons for visiting Sandwich, being that, quote, "We love the history and the remarkable preservation of your historic districts." Continuing to support the finishing of the restoration of this icon for me is a no-brainer. We have the funds set aside for that purpose, for purposes just like this. I have heard the question, why do we need two town halls? And while I find myself feeling a sense of pride and perhaps even a little moved that our select board and other committees have continued to meet there since the 19th century, this structure is actually now much more of a cultural center serving locals and visitors alike. If you have never attended an event upstairs at the Glasstown stage or visited what is now the home of the Sandwich Arts Alliance, you are cheating yourselves. What a perfect fit for the continued enjoyment and allure for that building and our town. In closing, I would like to quote from the Town of Sandwich Historic Preservation Plan. Quote, "The town of Sandwich has retained a sense of its history to a much larger degree than many other communities on the Cape. The character is palpable, adding force to the description of Sandwich as, quote, the oldest town on Cape Cod. It must be fiercely guarded as it is not to be, or it must be fiercely guarded if it is not to be lost. It would be tragic if the town's legacy became only a fading memory and a catchy phrase rather than an awareness of authentic history that can be sensed and experienced." Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Jim Dever, 1 Sleepy Hollow Lane, member of the Finance Committee. I was an emphatic no on this vote. I'm a U.S. history major, love history, love our town's history. Moved to Sandwich in 2008. In 2009, this body was asked to invest $3.45 million into Town Hall. We voted yes to do that. No one told us in 10 years we'd be requesting a new Town Hall. But that is exactly what happened. In the year 2019, a meeting such as this brought forward was both the Town Hall and the Community for Active Living. We will recall at first that vote failed. Then after the vote failed, a member of the Board of Selectmen came into the town, the meeting, and eventually there was a revote. There was a revote done that night. There was a revote done that night, if I may, thank you. And based upon that revote, after folks had left for the evening to feed their children, to take care of chores, the vote was done over, and this time it passed. Fair enough. So now we have a new town hall that was awarded $5 million. We're one of the few communities, if not the only one in Massachusetts, supporting 2 town halls. If it comes time to tighten our belts, well, this is the time to do it. Unfortunately, we voted no to the old town hall when we built the new town hall. So now we are asking this evening $2 million to invest in the old town hall. Where does that end? That we don't know. Are there going to be more additions for the new town hall? Something to be determined. When it comes to this use of resources, I think this is the wrong use for community resources. Let's port those to something we can all use. Fields, what have you, parks. The idea that the old town hall, as it's conveniently called, needs to be reserved for Board of Selectmen meetings, planning board meetings, school committee meetings. I've been to those meetings. No one goes. We can have them at the Sand Hill building. We can have them at the Cal. There's really no reason to keep it open strictly so we can hold board meetings in which few attend. If there was a way in which we could get good revenue out of that building, so be it. But right now, the only tenant is a nonprofit that pays minimal to the town. So yes, is the town important? Of course. Is history important? Of course. Exactly how many people have planned their summer vacations to see where a Board of Selectmen sit? Not too many. Certainly not my family. So while I appreciate Mr. King's enthusiasm for our historical district, I agree. But folks, you made a decision. You can't have two town halls. At some point, it does need to stop, and I request my fellow members of this community, we always ask, where can we tighten the belts? What can we do? Again, two town halls seems a bit redundant. I thank you for the time, and I yield the remaining.
Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
Well, thank you folks for coming this evening and helping to carry out the mission that is the town. And this responsibility for this building is part of our mission. And I can't imagine really any project that we've endeavored here in Sandwich over the last 40 or 50 years that's been as successful as the town hall renovation has been. The building, you have to get on a waiting list to get the stage on weekends. It's a constant source of pride for us as a community, and the meeting spaces are important and are necessary. Our 100 Route 6A building does not have a meeting room that can support the nightly meetings that the old town hall supports. So help us to continue our responsibilities for the things we need to preserve the setting. That's what our obligation is to preserve the setting that will enhance the village for people to want to come here and in perpetuity. So thank you for your participation tonight, and thank you, and I think we have the support for this, and thank you to Mr. King.
Chris, 40 Route 130. What exactly is that $85,000 a month going to renovate? Because that's a lot of money for renovations that there have already been lots of money spent on renovations. I mean, is it paint? Is it windows? Is it a roof? Because that don't add up. Yeah, windows. Windows are getting expensive.
When the
I mean, refinishing floors.
I'll try to answer. When as was said in the late before 2010, when funding was appropriated to restore the old building, that was a very extensive project. It addressed all the structural issues. It restored the upstairs, which did not even have heat or electricity. So where people meet now, there was no heat or electricity. That was all enhanced. It did not address the windows other than truing them up. Those were installed in the 1950s. If you've been in there, they're a mess. And so a good chunk of this, which I want to highlight, is going to be added to the $1,040,000 that was appropriated last May towards this project. And then we also got a $200,000 grant from the Mass Historic Commission. So all told, from the Cultural Facilities Grant, so all told, between what we approved last year and what's recommended this year, it's just over $2.4 million. The bulk of that is going for window replacements, which the Historic District has already signed off on through the Historical Commission. It's also addressing, there's water infiltration coming in the front and in the sides, so all that's going to be addressed. It's going to be fully repainted, and the cedar shingles on the roof are going to be treated. So it's pretty extensive work. It's expensive because it is a historic building and we have to follow certain construction practices in the way things are restored. There is a preservation restriction on the property, so we have to follow that. I think we feel, based on what was done 15 years ago and what's being done here, pretty much everything that was a problem years ago is now going to finally be addressed. We didn't have enough money in the past to touch the windows.
So how much over the last 4 fiscal years has been spent on the town hall that's no longer the active town hall? I mean, you got $2 million just this year and last year, so.
No, that's appropriated. If this gets done, then we will issue the bid to do the project.
Right, but I'm asking how much has been appropriated over the last 3-4 fiscal years?
Nothing more than the $2.4 million that's highlighted.
So nothing previous in that 2 years?
No.
Before last year?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm Bill Holt. I live at 3
Excuse
Summers.
me. I think, yes.
Pam Mulvihill, Snake Pond Road. I have no problem with fixing the town hall, although I do agree with the last gentleman. I want to know if this is a community preservation fund, why $529,975 are being set aside for debt payment. If we're putting this money in out of our taxes, which some of us scrape in order to pay, why are we doing debt service out of that money?
Yeah, that was from the last article, so that was Article 11, not Article 12.
Oh, you're trying to spend more money that isn't there.
No, that was for projects that town meeting has already approved. Some of our larger land purchases were done with debt. For example, the Rubicam property next to the Cook property. There were several other projects that we had funded using debt, and so those are our debt payments on what town meeting and the voters had previously approved.
But we've got $1,029,690. That's a little big number for me. That we're putting out for this next project, but we still have debt service. Are we borrowing for this?
No, for this, we would have cash to pay for it outright.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm Bill Holt. I live at 3 Summer Street. This is incredibly important. This is not about a functional, the old town hall isn't sufficiently large to handle all the business that's needed to run a modern town. That's why we have the new building. They're not equivalent. This is, as Mr. King said, this is part of our history. This is the very center of this town. It's a gem. I'm an architect. I can tell you, you cannot replace a building like this. You tear it down, you let it go to ruin, it's gone forever. We don't want a piece of concrete there. We have a beautiful, beautiful building. We must maintain it, make sure that it can stay active. As Mr. Ellis pointed out, the space on the second floor is used all the time. It's a marvelous place for town gatherings of all sorts. So I strongly support this. It seems like a lot of money, but in today's construction dollars, it really isn't. This is worth doing.
Hello, my name is Peter Losh. I live at 8 Peters Pond. I just have a question about the future use of the old town hall and the future use of the new town hall. Is there a plan to eventually move all of the activities that are in the new town hall back, to the old town hall? And if not, what is the future plan for that building once it's fully restored?
I'd just add that, you know, the historic town hall was built in 1834. Like, Lord knows how extravagant and how much that would have cost for people back then when that was built. But as the prior speaker said, it has no use as modern office building. And so when the public supported the town purchasing the old bank building at 106A, and that was restored, again, all those things were done with cash, not debt. We consolidated 5 different office buildings into one. We've sold 2 of those 5 buildings. We're trying to sell a 3rd. In my personal opinion, and I just stress my personal opinion, the one building we should never get rid of in the entire town is 130 Main Street, the historic town hall. It has no use for modern offices. It's much more relevant as a meeting place and for civic functions. I just can't express enough how much more efficient and effective it is having those 51 personnel that were spread throughout 5 different buildings and 20 departments all in one building that we never had previously. Like, it's made an incredible difference internally and just doing the everyday public service of the town. And hopefully it's better customer service, because instead of having to go to 3 or 4 buildings, you're coming to one.
Thank you.
Hello, Bob King from Summer Street again.
And Mr.
I just
King,
want to quickly say,
Mr. King, just a reminder.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, yeah. I know you know, but.
I just want to say, obviously, nobody comes to town to watch a selectmen's meeting in our old town hall, but they do come to town for a lot of incredibly wonderful performances that the town hall's auditorium space now provides. After the town hall was originally restored, there was a committee formed called the Sandwich Town Hall Preservation Trust that essentially was formed in order to monitor that building to ensure that it did not fall into disrepair. I've been on that committee for most of its inception, and it is, I can't even begin to tell you the amazing improvements we as a committee, through our fundraising efforts, have made to the upstairs as a performance space. It's, while you might not be able to make a direct correlation between the expense and what you get out of it, there really is, this is an investment. It's not, and it will pay, it does pay us back. We really do get a lot more from that building than just a space for some of our town committees to meet. There's an incredible association downstairs, the Sandwich Arts Alliance. They had an event just this last week where people had taken pieces of the old boardwalk and turned them into artwork and had an auction. We had at our 2nd annual Mardi Gras party with the Catnip Junkies, really well attended, fun dance night. So, you know, whereas you have to connect the dots. This money is an investment, and we will get a return on this investment. Thank you.
My name is Jim Coogan. I live at 187 Main Street. I'd like to move the previous question.
The motion is to move the question. We have a second. All right. So then I will open the motion, open the voting on moving the question in just a moment. Correct. So we are voting just to close the question. We're not voting on the overall. So once we get if we get a 2/3 majority on this, we will then move on to voting on the original question, which is a simple majority. And the voting is open. Five seconds. Voting is closed. And the motion passes. Now, we'll open the voting on Article 12, which this time will just be a simple majority. So 50% plus 1. Voting is open. Five seconds. Voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 13, HERO Act, Disabled Veterans Exemption Adjustment.
Move that the town accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 22I, which authorizes an annual cost of living increase for the qualified disabled veterans to be effective for applicable exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2025, as printed in the warrant under Article number 13.
Second.
Jackie.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends passage of Article 13.
Thank you.
My name's Bob James. I'm a member of the Board of Assessors, and the Board of Assessors voted unanimously to recommend Article 13 and 14.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the article? Seeing none, I will open the voting. Five seconds remaining. Voting is closed. Motion passes. Article 14, HERO Act, Disabled Veterans Exemption.
Move that the town accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 22J, which authorizes an increase of 25% in the relative personal exemption amounts for qualified disabled veterans to be effective for applicable exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2025, as printed in the warrant under Article number 14.
Second.
Ed.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends passage of Article 14.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 14? Seeing none, I will open the voting. There are 5 seconds remaining. Voting is closed. The motion passes. I would like to recognize Mr. Carl Johansson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As a point of order, before I would like to add one thing that was not mentioned in the previous article on the history of our old town hall. We have the artifacts and the names of all the veterans who have served our town in other times that allowed us to do what we're doing here now. And that's very important that we remember that. When you go into that town hall sometime, go check and see the names that have given, in some cases, their lives so we can do what we're doing here. On behalf of the Sandwich veterans, Post 188, and its commander, Ray Turrell, and myself, I would like to thank the town manager, Select Board for placing Article 13 and 14 on this year's warrant. I would also like to thank the town meeting members for approving both articles. Thank you.
Article 15, accept provisions of Mass General Law 200A, process for disposition of abandoned funds.
Move that the town accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 200A, Section 9A, to allow the town to retain any abandoned funds in the custody of the town, provided the notice requirements set forth in the statute are complied with as printed in the warrant under Article 15.
Second.
Crystal.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends passage of Article 15.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 15? Seeing none, I'll open the voting. There are 5 seconds remaining. Voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 16, accept provisions of Mass General Law 53, obtaining nomination papers.
Move that the town accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 53, Section 9A, requiring nominating papers for town offices to be obtained 48 workday hours before nomination papers are required to be submitted, as printed in the warrant under Article 16.
Second.
Thank you. Jim? So then, never mind. Do we have any discussion? Please state your name and address.
Jennifer O'Neill, 2 Bottom Lane. I just have a question about this. Do we have to pass this Mass General Law part of it?
Yeah, so what this does, it's accepting a provision of the general laws. I'll try to explain it in normal English instead of like how they make us write these, that it doesn't change when nomination papers are due back at the town clerk's office. It just means that if someone was gonna run, because there's work that has to happen in the clerk's office regardless, it has to be at least 48 business hours before they're due back.
Right.
It just gives them time to do whatever work's needed to get it ready. It doesn't change the date by which the papers are due.
I understand that.
Yep.
The question is, do we have to accept the Mass General Law? Can we say no?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to argue that we should say no, because I think things do change and can change within 48 workday hours prior to putting in your nomination papers. Someone new could be announced that they're running for office. Someone could pass away. Someone could choose to not do something. And I feel like this limits our ability to be flexible and respond to what someone might become motivated to serve our town in some way, shape, or form. And I oppose that. I think we should welcome people to serve in whatever way they choose without an artificial time constraint. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. There are 5 seconds remaining. Voting is closed. Motion passes. Article 17, zoning amendment, accessory dwelling units.
Move that the town amend the Sandwich Protective Zoning Bylaws, Table of Contents, Section 2500, Intensity of Use Regulation, Section 4130, accessory dwelling units and definitions, accessory dwelling unit, as printed in the warrant under Article 18.
Second.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Reisig. I'm Chair of the Planning Board, and the Planning Board recommends passage of Article 17.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Leanne Drake, and I'm your Director of Community Development for the town. Before you tonight is an amendment to the Protective Zoning Bylaws, Section 4130, that regulates accessory dwelling units. And the reason we are here amending this bylaw before you is so that we can come into compliance with the Affordable Homes Act of 2024. This act changed the way we regulated accessory dwelling units and rendered our current bylaw inactionable. Accessory dwelling units are now a protected class in zoning statute in Massachusetts, and as of February 2nd, 2024, this new statute governs the creation of accessory dwelling units here in our town. So what is an accessory dwelling unit? It's a small residential unit that's accessory to a primary residential structure that's located on the same property. It can be internal, such as converting a basement, attached, such as converting your garage, or it can be a standalone structure. The maximum size of an accessory dwelling unit is 900 square feet of gross floor area, or half the gross floor area of the existing principal dwelling. As part of this Affordable Homes Act, municipalities can no longer require owner occupancy for an accessory dwelling unit or a primary dwelling. We can no longer require special permits or other form of discretionary relief, and we can no longer require more than one parking space. Section 4130 addresses accessory dwelling units locally, and the following are proposed changes to the bylaw. We are revising the definition as shown here on the screen, and we're also proposing the following requirements. An accessory dwelling unit will be by right in all zoning districts that allow for a single family use. An accessory dwelling unit will have to conform with all building codes, sanitary codes, and all their applicable laws. An accessory dwelling unit must meet the dimensional requirements that are set forth in 2600 of the zoning bylaws, and what that means is that they do have to meet setbacks and they have to meet lot coverage. One parking space is required on the property. The primary dwelling and the ADU will not be allowed to be severed in ownership. They cannot be used for seasonal or short-term rentals, and when the ADU is rented, it must be rented year-round. So on screen here, you can see a sample layout of an 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit. This unit can accommodate 2 bedrooms, a full bath and laundry, and an open plan kitchen and living room. A full reading of all the requirements are in your warrant on page 14, 15, and 16. So in conclusion, this bylaw is state mandated. The state's model bylaw is what's currently in effect, and that governs the creation of accessory dwelling units here in Sandwich today. We crafted this bylaw within the parameters of that law to best suit the needs of our community. A negative vote tonight means that the state's model bylaw remains in effect, and a positive vote means that this bylaw will go into effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the article?
Bill Holt at 3 Sandwich Street. I strongly support this. The ADU is one of the best pieces of legislation for this state in order to increase our supply of housing, which we don't have enough housing for year-round, especially on the Cape. I strongly support it. Thank you for the planning group to actually adapt the state law best for our town. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jack Vaccaro, 16 Oriole Lane. I'm speaking in opposition to Article 17, not because I'm opposed to ADUs, but I object to the framing of the article. Let me explain. At our town meeting last year, we took an important step forward. We passed a bylaw to allow accessory dwelling units, by right, up to 900 square feet of habitable space. That's real, usable space. Not closets or stairwells, just comfortable, functional living space, a great move for young families, older residents, and caregivers alike. But then the state stepped in, passed the Affordable Homes Act. It limits ADUs to 900 square feet of gross floor area. That sounds similar, but it's not. That includes stairwells, closets, hallways, bathrooms, even the space where your furnace, oil tank, and water heater reside. When all said and done, we're left with around 600 square feet of actual livable space. Folks, despite what you see on the screen, that's a one-bedroom unit at best. And let's face it, a one-bedroom ADU benefits neither a growing family trying to stay in town or an elderly person or persons who need a little bit more room. That's not what this town voted for, and I doubt it's what the state really intended either. Now, a few hundred square feet of living space may seem inconsequential, but it really can have a significant impact on a person's well-being and quality of life. Consider a scenario. A recently widowed Sandwich resident wants to build an ADU on the property where she and her late husband had raised a family. Nothing fancy, just a modest unit that would accommodate the needs of an elderly person wishing to age in place. Unlike the image on the screen, it must have full wheelchair accessibility and should be large enough that her grandchildren could stay when they visit, or that a caregiver might live if the need arises. Under the bylaw we passed last year, that was entirely possible. But under the state's new size definition, she's suddenly out of luck. There's no room left, not for a second bedroom, not even a small play space for the kids. We can and should do better than this. Despite what you may have heard, the town does in fact have the ability to adopt a larger ADU size limit than is provided under the Affordable Homes Act. Quoting from this guidance document, recently published by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, entitled Model Zoning for Accessory Dwelling Units, I quote, "A municipality is permitted to provide for protected use ADUs that are larger than 900 square feet, so long as they are permitted by right and subject to all protections afforded under the Affordable Homes Act." So tonight, I'm presenting a friendly amendment to Article 17 to establish that ADUs shall be permitted up to 900 square feet of habitable space, as defined in the Massachusetts Residential Code, subject to clarification and consistency with the state law under the Affordable Homes Act. The proposed amendment is relatively simple. It affects only the definition section of Article 17 by removing the words gross floor area and replacing with habitable space. It also removes the definition of gross floor area and inserts a definition of habitable space that is consistent with the current edition of the Massachusetts Residential Code. Folks, this isn't just a zoning issue. It's about Sandwich supporting real, human-scale housing, options that work for the families and residents who want to stay in this town that they love. Let's not let a legal definition from a well-intentioned but misguided state law squeeze the life and livability out of our housing options. Please support this amendment to Article 17. Thank you.
Did you bring a written copy of that amendment? Could you please present it to us? And actually, just if you give us just a moment, our town council has just walked in, so we're going to confer with him for just a moment. I'm going to turn this over to town council.
Good evening, Brian Riley with Town Council. My car died, my apologies. I see that the amendment wants to delete the term gross floor area from the definition of accessory dwelling unit and insert something else. I believe the Attorney General will have a problem with that because gross floor area is the part that's added to the statute, and that's why this is on the warrant in the first place, is to make it consistent with the statute. So I would recommend the moderator find that beyond the scope.
All right. So with that, I do find that beyond the scope. So is there any further discussion?
Dome Jellison, 21 Piccadilly Road, Commissioner of Disabilities. I find it difficult to see something like that to pass the building code for accessibility. I don't understand why the state would allow such a thing and should be looked into.
Hi. I'm Maureen Wicklund, 9 Robin Road. I'd like to talk a little bit in a broader sense about the need to potentially pursue this matter following what was just stated from Town Council around the potential change and perhaps following up with the Attorney General. I'm a proud Washashore of 27 years, who chose Sandwich as a place to raise our children and to work as an educator. I've taught many hundreds of students at our beloved Wing School and supported thousands of students, other students, as an administrator in this district. Throughout my personal and professional life, I have stressed to young people the importance of honoring and celebrating their citizenship in the town of Sandwich. And I have always looked to the citizen activists and historians of Sandwich who understand the town in a very deep way because they grew up here and are invested in the future of Sandwich. They are not stuck in the past, but they have the context that helps us consider how to help the town continue to thrive. And many of those people are on the stage right now. And one of them we recently lost. As my own children and my former students have come into adulthood, I want those kids to be the citizen activists of the future. I want some of those great young people who have been raised to love Sandwich to be the next Pat Ellis's, the next Bobby George's, the next Mike Miller's, the next Shane Hoctor's. In order for that to happen, we need to have more affordable dwellings for young people who are starting out. I'm a little nervous. Can you tell from my voice?
Doing just fine.
Perhaps on the property where they grew up, with their parents in the original family home, potentially available to do some babysitting. And can you also picture a time when maybe the residences will switch and the time will come that the elderly parents are ready to downsize and they're ready to move into the smaller accessory unit, and the growing family can move into the family home and take over to become the next generation of citizens of Sandwich with the long history and love for the town. And I say that as a person who was not myself raised here, but who very deeply admires the people who have and who have made Sandwich stay what it is, and thriving and becoming modern and all of that, all at the same time. So when I think about the size restriction that I kind of think was not intentional, like usually when you think about the square footage of a home, you don't consider the size of the bathroom and the closets and stuff like that, right? You're thinking about the actual usable space. So whatever has to happen, and this is the part I don't know about, with the Attorney General and with pursuing this, it makes me wonder if Cape Towns should kind of get together on this, because this isn't just a problem for Sandwich, having young people continue to live in the town, it's a problem in all of the Cape Towns. This seems to be an innovative way we can help our young people be here and continue to contribute to our community. So I would just encourage, like, let's not give up the ship on this. Let's keep trying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elaine Bafaro from 19 Woodridge. One of the questions I have, and we're talking about this, we're saying grandma wants to live there, the single person, but nowhere in the description does it limit the number of people or say the number of people that can actually live in the dwelling. So is that, I mean, because you could get many people.
That is correct. So under Massachusetts state law, we're not allowed to regulate what a family is under zoning, because a family means different things to different people. So what's regulated is basically how many you could fit in. So if it's a 900 square foot unit and you have approximately 2 bedrooms, it would be how many people would be able to fit within that space.
So what does that mean? What does that exactly, they can fit in that space? I could put 8 bunk beds in there.
You would also have to meet all sanitary codes, so you would have to meet Title V.
I'm sorry?
You would have to meet your septic requirements under Title V, and then you would have to meet the regulations as to the amount of parking spaces on site. So, you know, if 8 people had 8 cars and you couldn't accommodate them on site, you wouldn't be able to have 8 people.
Okay, but if the septic system is for a 2-bedroom, it still leaves it open to the amount of people that can live in the quarters.
The amount of people that could occupy the bedroom. Correct.
All right, I just think that there needs to be a limit, and I always I'm from Worcester originally, and there was a law that said that only so many people could occupy a 2-bedroom. So I have a concern.
Thank you.
And just to clarify on that, we used to be able to regulate it. Our previous bylaws did regulate 2 occupants per room, per bedroom, but we're no longer able to regulate how many people and what a family structure looks like. So unfortunately, that's something that changed with state law.
Okay. Thank you.
Andrew Rondo, 16 Seneca Lane. I would just like to understand the difference at a very high level between what the state law would be versus what Sandwich's law is. So, for example, if I were to put an accessory dwelling in my backyard, what am I allowed to do and not allowed to do with this proposal versus what am I allowed to do and not allowed to do if we voted no and went with the state law?
There's only one real major difference between what we've proposed and what is in the state law, and that is regulating the use of short-term rentals and seasonal rentals within the accessory dwelling unit. So our previous bylaw, because it was called an accessory dwelling unit, was rendered inactionable. So we had to take the definitions from the state and we put that in. We did ask the questions about creating a larger size, and they let us know that we would have to come back with an additional bylaw. In order for what you could and couldn't do right now, depending on a no vote and a yes vote, so you would be able, with a yes vote, you would have a primary structure and accessory dwelling unit, and they would be used for year-round rental. You did not have to occupy either, and both units could be used for year-round rental. If we voted no tonight, you would still have the two units, the primary dwelling and the accessory dwelling, and they could be used for short-term rental. So you would essentially be creating two families to be used in short-term rental, and the planning board at the time when we went through this felt that may create issues within a neighborhood to have owner-occupied properties used on a short-term rental basis.
Okay. So thank you for clarifying that a yes vote restricts short-term rentals and a no vote allows short-term rentals.
Correct.
Basically, a yes vote blocks people from putting Airbnbs in their backyard.
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Jim Coogan, 187 Main Street. I have a question, and basically I'm looking at page 15, section 4133, use and dimensional requirements. My understanding is that if we don't vote for this, if we vote against this, then the wording that is struck would still be in effect. And as it says on section E of that section, there'll be no more than 900 square feet of habitable space. And it seems like we're discussing gross space and habitable space. If we don't vote for this or we vote against it, we will still have habitable space as it is listed in the present article.
Unfortunately, that's not correct. So our present article was rendered inactionable on February 2nd due to the Affordable Homes Act. Because the regulation of accessory dwelling units became a protected use, we no longer were able to use ours. So as I went through and revised our zoning, I used the original placeholder to be able to do that. So if we do not vote for this tonight, we go off the state's model bylaw. We do not go off our own. Ours will just remain inconsistent and unactionable. So the document itself will be written wrong, but as people apply, we would have to use the state's model bylaw. So this one would not still be in effect in any way.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question, so it's basically so everybody can understand it. Last year we voted on this bylaw, and it gave us a pretty good habitable space. Now, if we vote on this and it gets affirmative, do we lose our habitable space that we had? Do we get cut down in that? And if we vote it down, we still have what we had from our original from last year. So we're going to lose our space.
Just to clarify that, so we are at 900 gross square feet whether we approve this or deny this. We brought this up at the planning board meetings. After our first public hearing, this came up at our second public hearing. We were close to the end of the process, but we reopened and revisited with the planning board and discussed adding an additional bylaw for either a carriage house at a larger size or an accessory dwelling unit extra large version. The planning board took it under consideration, and a majority, it was not a unanimous vote, but a majority of the members felt that they wanted to wait and see how this bylaw, the protected use ADU one from the state, impacted our community in terms of environmental concerns, noise, congestion in neighborhoods. Our previous ADU bylaw did not allow accessory dwelling units on lots smaller than 20,000 square feet. This one allows it on every single residential lot. So the thought process behind that was that they wanted to make sure that they were controlling the growth and that they were keeping neighborhoods you know, in a good condition. And they pledged to take it up this summer to look at an additional bylaw that they could potentially craft that would help with the residents and that could maybe accommodate a larger size.
Hello, my name's Bob King, 9 Summer Street. I served on the planning board when we crafted the first ADU accessory dwelling bylaw. And tonight, I think the most important thing here is the intent is to provide year-round housing for working people, for families, for people that want to age in place. It's not so that you can have a B&B or an Airbnb out in your garage. And if we vote no, essentially we're going to be undoing that. We are going to end up with accessory dwellings that have no bite to them to make them make them a year-round rental only. So while this is not the perfect solution, I think I would go with voting yes for this. And as Leanne stated, they're working on trying to come up with another bylaw so that they could ultimately increase the amount of square feet, because I agree with Mr. Vaccaro also that we should go back to what our own old bylaw was. But for the time being, if we don't do this, we're going to open ourselves up to a lot of Airbnbs and temporary short-term rentals. And that's the reason why we're in the predicament of not having enough affordable housing to begin with. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Picard, 24 Captain Payne Road. I'm currently a member of the Planning Board, and I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. There's been a lot of information presented this evening, and just for the audience, we're going to hopefully vote in a minute on this. And what you're voting on tonight is to accept a bylaw that we crafted in the Planning Board, which aligns with a current state mandated ADU. That's very important. That's all we're doing, is that we're bringing ourselves in alignment. If we don't do this, we will have to use the model bylaw, which is not exactly what we want. Unfortunately, the ADU that we passed last year is no longer enforceable because of the state action. That's very important. There's a lot of things we may not like about this state mandated bylaw, but we have very little room to maneuver, and we've maneuvered as much as we could on it. As was discussed earlier, and as the attorney rightly said, we can't change the gross square footage. We discussed that quite a bit. So I encourage you to vote yes on this so that we bring the town in alignment. What's also important about that, there are state grants that we go for that we'll not be able to go for if we don't bring ourselves into alignment on housing. As also discussed, we are discussing to bring forward, hopefully next year, another bylaw which will allow, and we can't call it ADU, but we can call it something else, that will allow housing that is larger. So we are progressively looking at this, and we're trying to move it as quickly as we can forward as we go forward in support of Sandwich. There was a comment made earlier, and I want to make sure that this is understood also. The town allows seasonal housing. It allows short-term rentals. Those are controlled differently. So please don't confuse the ADU with those. The ADU is specifically, as was stated earlier, is an attempt at getting year-round housing that's affordable. We had a very good bylaw that did that last year. Unfortunately, we're taking a half step backwards, but we'll continue to move forward as we continue to work on this in support of the need. So thank you. Let's vote yes on this. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Mealy. I live at 108 Lindsay Way. And I'm 20 years old, proud product of the town of Sandwich, born and raised here, love this town. And I hope to stay here long term. I love this town. It's incredible. However, I'm looking at my monthly budget that I'm doing with my new wife. We got married 3 months ago. And thank you. And I'm not going to lie. There is no way. I can't say no way, the Lord can provide miracles, but I will say that it's very difficult when we look at our monthly budget to say, can we actually live in Sandwich long term? And the answer is no, mainly because of our insane property taxes that we have in this town. They're just insanely high. I was talking with my dad a little bit ago, and he has a pretty average home, and the property taxes he pays is insane. It's like having a monthly mortgage, and he paid off his house. He should not have that, but that's not why I came up here. I'm addressing the article at hand. Essentially, voting yes on this article, going back to what that guy was saying about Airbnbs, voting yes on this article would restrict people's personal property rights. Voting no on this article would preserve people's personal property rights. It's as simple as that. The fundamental value of America is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. The founders intended the pursuit of happiness to mean the right to private property. If we do not have the ability to decide what we do with our own private property, what is the point of America? It's literally, like, the promise of America is that you can own your own property and then not have to pay penance every month through property taxes. And the fact that we're paying so much in property taxes, I think we have the right to decide what we do with our property and what we don't. Thank you.
I get 2 minutes. Jeff Picard, 24 Captain Payne Road. Just wanted to provide clarification on those last comments. This is not restricting Airbnbs. Let's please understand that. This is bringing our bylaw in alignment with the mandated state on affordable housing. Airbnbs, short-term rentals, seasonal rentals are controlled elsewhere. This is for long-term, year-round rental, making it affordable. So the gentleman who was just here, who just got married, has a very tight budget, so that you can stay in Sandwich and live here. Your parents don't have to own it. That's one change that is beneficial by this state. Last year it had to be owner-occupied. It does not have to be owner-occupied. So it's going to allow you to create a small, affordable unit that such people as new couples, new families can live in. And it's not putting any further constraints on Airbnb, short-term rentals, and so forth. Please understand that. We're simply bringing our bylaw in alignment with the mandate from the state. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Beverly Camo, 28 Grove Street. I'm a local realtor in Sandwich, and I also serve on the Association of Realtors Board of Directors at the local level and the state level. And this was all created out of the housing crisis that we are experiencing throughout the state. And I think there's a lot of misconception that I'm hearing around here. So far, I think there's only been 5 applications for ADUs in Sandwich. I might be a little off on that. But the people who are looking to build these ADUs are for their aging parents or their young children who we are losing to other towns because we just can't support affordable housing here in the resale or new construction. So I am, and the Association of Realtors backs this bylaw passage. It's a passionate subject for us because you're right, the average sale price in Sandwich right now is $683,000. So do you want your child to move away from you? Do you want your parents to move away? That's the people who are looking to do ADUs. It's not families, and it's not Airbnbs and rentals, so short-term rentals. So I support this wholeheartedly.
Jed Hazard, Farmersville Road. I motion to move the question.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, so we're gonna vote on moving the question. Just give us a second to bring it up. We did receive a second. So we have a motion and a second. This is a 2/3 just to move the question. This is not on the article itself. Voting is open. Five seconds remaining. Voting is closed. The motion to move the question passes. And if there's any further discussion on the main motion, we go right to the vote then. Sorry, no more discussion on the vote. We're gonna go right to voting on it. And now, because this is this comes down from the state, because of the type of motion that it is, or the article that it is, involving housing. Typically, a zoning article would be 2/3, but this one, because of the nature of it, is a simple majority. And the vote is now open. So we have 5 seconds remaining. Voting is closed. The motion passes. Article 18, zoning amendment, contiguous non-conforming lots.
Move that the town amend the Sandwich Protective Zoning Bylaws, Table of Contents, Section 2500, Intensity of Use Regulation, Section 2550, Non-Conforming Lots, as printed in the warrant under Article 18.
Second.
The Planning Board recommends passage of this Article 18. Planning Board recommends passage of this Article 18.
Leanne?
Sorry, just waiting for the slides to come up. Thank you. Again, Leanne Drake, Director of Community Development. So the request before you tonight also comes from the Affordable Homes Act of 2024. Our previous bylaw regarding lots held in common ownership was derived from state law and stated that lots that did not meet the requirements of lot size that were under our zoning bylaws and were held in common ownership by abutting properties would merge for zoning purposes and therefore render them unbuildable. But under the new revised statute, lots that have a minimum of 10,000 square feet with 75 feet of frontage and that are held in common ownership can now be built on to create what the state defines as a starter home. A property owner can now construct a single-family home not larger than 1,850 square feet, must have a minimum of 3 bedrooms, and the property cannot be used for seasonal or short-term rental and must comply with all building codes, Title V, and all other applicable laws and regulations. So very similar to what we just passed with the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. This is currently in effect and can currently be utilized, and we are just redrafting our bylaws to come in compliance with the state statute. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, I will open the voting. Now it's open. And just a reminder, this one is a 2/3 majority. Five seconds. Voting is closed. Motion passes. Article 19, Town Bylaw Amendment, Short-Term Rental Bylaw.
Move that the town amend the Sandwich general bylaws by adding a new chapter 12, short-term rentals, as printed in the warrant under Article 19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
The planning board also recommends passage of this Article 19.
Leanne Drake, Director of Community Development again. So before you tonight is the creation of a new general bylaw regulating the use of short-term rentals. So for background, in January of this year, the state building code was revised and updated to the 10th edition. The revised code requires an annual safety inspection of all short-term rental properties. This is in effect right now. The bylaw that we are proposing tonight complements these efforts, but will not be in effect unless it is voted upon positively. So what is a short-term rental? It's defined as an occupied property where at least one room or unit is rented to an occupant or occupants for 1 to 30 consecutive days at a time. And a full reading of the definition can be found on your warrant on page 19. The purpose of this bylaw is to provide for the orderly operation of short-term rentals for residential properties that provide balance, neighborhood and public, that balance private and neighborhood and public interests. The regulations for this use will include an annual registration and inspection, weekly trash removal, maintaining that parking stays on site, the renting of less than 2 consecutive nights is prohibited, the use of RVs, campers, and sleeping tents are prohibited, and then no large-scale events, including but not limited to weddings, photo shoots, class reunions, and so forth. And then just to clarify this does not preclude you from holding a wedding at your home or preclude you from entertaining a large gathering. It just means that your property cannot be used as a wedding venue moving forward. Any violations of this bylaw can be subject to a daily fine, and for repeat offenders, your rental authorization could be revoked by the Board of Health after a public hearing for up to 3 years. So just in conclusion, the annual registration and inspection of short-term rentals is a state requirement that is currently in effect. The bylaw before you tonight that would regulate the use and conduct an orderly rental within a neighborhood would only come into effect if it was voted upon favorably tonight.
Thank you.
Jed Hazard. Jed Hazard?
Hazard? Yep.
What's the first name?
Jed.
Jed Hazard, thank you.
Sir?
Hi, my name is Jerry Chambers, 40 Plowed Neck Road, New Sandwich. I run Sand Dollar Realty. We have about 130 properties, mostly in Sandwich, that we manage. We don't own them. And they're all mostly short-term rentals. So when I read this, I said, well, they certainly didn't ask me about any of these things because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work. Just getting into some of the general provisions. Trash removal, it's requiring trash removal to be immediately removed after occupancy is concluded. Who's going to do that? Gibbs might pick it up once a week, twice a week in some places, but who's going to remove it immediately? And is that just for short-term rentals, or does that include my neighbor next door who lives there all the time? Does he need to get his stuff out when he goes back to New York? You know, I just don't like the wording of it, the immediately at all there, because it's impossible to adhere to. And with violations, it's just a step away from somebody not liking you, and all of a sudden you're paying a lot of money because they didn't like you. Parking. We just passed the ADU, and it required one parking space for, in the example, 2 bedrooms. Most of the properties down on North Shore Boulevard where we get all of our tax money from for short-term rentals are 2-bedroom cottages with 1 parking space. The rest of them are parked on the road. They cannot conform to this. So right away, you're either going to eliminate half your revenue by disallowing all those people to rent, or you have to strike the 1 parking, the 1 per bedroom rule on that. You know, maybe 1 spot per unit, that's fine, just like you did with the ADU, but having 2 for each 2-bedroom, those cottages are 480 square feet. They're not 900. So, you know, requiring them to have 2, but only requiring the ADUs to have 1 kind of seems silly. The other thing that we were looking at was just the enforcement in general. Who's responsible for it? Am I responsible for it if there's a problem at the property, being the manager, or is the owner responsible? Is my name the one that's required to be inside the property, or is it the owner's name required to be inside the property? It's not clear here of any of those. It's also not clear on when this goes into effect. The season's coming up. There's no way you can inspect 700 rental properties by this summer. I mean, there's people right now in it. So if this goes into effect right away, everybody's illegal. So I'd like some clarification on when it goes into effect, maybe how much it costs. I mean, I think those are reasonable questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Drake?
Just to address those last few questions at the end. So this is a 2-pronged process. The building code that changed, that we have to do the annual inspection and annual registration, we created that revolving fund at the last town meeting, special town meeting. That is in effect since January 1st. We have just sent out notices to all property owners that have registered as a short-term rental with the state. They will be required to sign up for an inspection before December of this year, and that requires an annual inspection. It's $150 to register, and it's $100 for an inspection. Then these bylaws, these would have to go to the Attorney General's office, and then they have 90 days to either approve, disapprove, or give comments on them. So that would not go into effect until really after the rental season. So these would just be the provisions going forth on how we would regulate the use, but the inspections themselves and the annual registration is a building code requirement.
Hi, Don Critchfield, 3 Woodwalk Road. We rent our house during the summer, so we can afford to live here in the winter. Is this a solution in search of a problem? How many have we found that there are properties that are so disorganized and poorly managed that this is necessary? I don't know. I would like somebody to tell me how often this town finds uninhabitable dwellings that are being rented out to people who are spending a ridiculous amount of money for my property. And the cost of administration was one of the questions I had, and how we, when can we come and see you?
Coming to see me tomorrow, but the registration is $150 and then $100 for the inspection.
Yeah, that's $250 that I don't need to spend. I'm fully booked and have been fully booked for the last several years by people who keep coming back. I don't think I've got a problem, and I don't know who does. So I don't know why this is necessary. Thank you.
If I can just address why this is before you, just to provide a little bit of clarity. So we thought it was a good time to bring it forward due to the changes in the building code, which have to go forward. The inspections is mandated by the state. We receive approximately 20 to 30 calls in the summer season with residents upset with short-term rentals in their neighborhood and with no regulations in place that they feel to protect them. Then coming out of just land use law and some of the cases that we've seen throughout the Commonwealth, if you don't expressly allow short-term rentals within your community, there is an argument that they are not allowed. We do not touch upon short-term rentals in our zoning bylaws. It was recommended by council that we put something together that allows them with small provisions to be able to meet so that we do not contest them down the road if someone contests that this is a business use in a residential district. So although this may seem like another level of regulatory enforcement, it's also a level of protection that we would now expressly allow the use within our community.
Hi, my name's Gary Sullivan, and I live on Fieldstone Drive. I'm very much in favor of this, but my situation is quite a bit different than the people on the beach. I live in a neighborhood, and I'm looking at it from the neighborhood perspective. One thing that I really think is missing is some truth in advertising. I've got one of my neighbors is VRBOing a house, and they're saying that it has, they can put 16 people in it. And you talk to the Board of Health, and it says it has septic for 8. I think that should be against the rules. I would like to propose an amendment, and I would say somewhere in the section, wait a minute. Like number 9 in the section 12.5, and it just, advertising occupancy needs to be aligned with the town guidelines regarding septic and parking. And that's all and that's the amendment that I would like to make.
Can you make a motion on that?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we create under section 1205, number 9, and the wording would be advertising, occupancy needs to be aligned with town guidelines regarding septic and parking.
Do you have that written down?
Well,
I've Do we have a second on that?
Yeah.
Second. Okay, motion and a second. So we will take a vote on the amendments to the question. The occupancy needs to be aligned with. What are we doing here? Yeah, it would add number 9 to the section.
Yeah, section 12.5.
12.5.
Number 9.
It'd be number 9.
That, yeah.
Right. So we will take a vote on that in just a moment. It'll be a simple majority.
Refer to you then.
So we don't, due to the advice of town council, we do not feel that it is outside the scope. So there's discussion on the motion to amend.
Mr. Moderator, just a question. Could the town respond to what the impact would be on the
Yes.
amendment?
Yes.
Just for the impact that this would have on just our internal process, this would be very difficult for us to be able to enforce. We wouldn't have the time to be able to troll these different sites. We would have to probably hire an outside independent company to do so. I think it would be quite difficult in order for us to be able to do that, but that's just up for consideration.
Thank you. It sounds like they're not for it at this time.
Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, we will open the voting. On the I'm voting on the motion to amend.
That's why I had him write it down. Section 12.09, inserting a new section entitled Advertising, and the language as proposed on this post-it note, occupancy needs to be aligned with town guidelines regarding septic and parking. End.
I'm ready to open the voting. Voting is open. Five seconds. Voting is closed. The amendment passes. So we will continue discussion on the amendment. On the main motion, rather. Sorry, could you continue discussion on the main motion?
The main motion as amended.
That's amended. Thank you, Mr. Sampson.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. David Sampson, 14 Cove Road. Stand before you this evening to propose an additional amendment on this Article 19. It correlates very closely with some of the concerns expressed with folks prior to me this evening. Therefore, I move to amend the main motion on Article 19 and modify the language printed on page 20 of the warrant under Section 12.05, General Provisions, item number 1, to strike the language requiring immediate removal of trash following any occupancy, and to replace the language as follows. Trash removal. All household trash shall be removed from the premises at minimum once per week.
Do we have a second? Second.
I have provided a written copy of this to yourself and the town clerk.
Thank you.
And in case folks are wondering why I am bringing this amendment forward this evening, I am not in the short-term rental business or in the trash business, but based on feedback I've received from a number of individuals in the community over the past several days, and I think the gentleman here who's in the short-term rental business also echoed that sentiment, this is something that would make a lot of sense.
Thank you.
I also have to add that I am continuing to try to wrap my arms around this concept of more Bobby Georges, and I say that with endearment.
Do we have any discussion on the amendment?
Hi, Tammy Gibbs, 10 Georges Rock Road. Unlike Dave, I do have trash. So, I have to support what Dave put forward. There is no way that I can get to everybody on Saturday, and I'm not the only company in town, but I can tell you I have many of those short-term rentals, and there is no way I'm going to be able to pick up 5 to 7 beaches after 11 o'clock on Saturday. So most of the short-term rentals, I can tell you, have 1, 2, and 3 time a week pickup. So those are basically on the beaches, but then we have a lot of, as we know, in neighborhoods that we just can't get to on a Saturday. So I think the amendment put forward, from my point, is just reasonable. there is no way I can get to 600 customers on Saturday, as much as I would like. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I got a question.
Yes.
The Board of Health here, can they enforce that to remove the trash? Do we have the Board of Health here?
Hi, I'm Heather Gallant, Director of Public Health. I think it would be extremely difficult, given the volume of those units that are in town.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, then I will open a vote on the motion to amend Article 19. And it states as follows: move to amend the main motion on Article 19 to modify the language printed on page 20 of the warrant under Section 12.5, General Provisions, item number 1, to strike the language requiring immediate removal of trash following any occupancy and to replace the language as follows: trash removal. All household trash shall be removed from the premises at minimum once per week. And this is a simple majority. I declare the voting open. Five seconds. Voting is closed. The amendment passes. I'll resume discussion on the motion as amended. The article as amended.
Hi, Paula Chambers, 40 Plowed Neck Road in Sandwich. Myself and my husband run Sand Dollar Realty. He was up earlier. There's a number of problems with the way that this article was written. I don't know that you reached out to many people that are affected by it, other than the people that called in to complain a couple of times. But some of the other pieces that I have a problem with in this would be under the enforcement section. It says, whoever violates any provision of this bylaw or regulation promulgated hereunder may be penalized by indictment or on complaint brought in the district court. And then the fines, you put up there the section about the non-criminal disposition between 100 and 300, but there's also a section about civil penalty up to $5,000 a day. And it's not really clear to me who's getting penalized. Is it the person that parked their car on the grass, or is it the homeowner who didn't know their tenant did that, but it happened and now they're getting a penalty? And what is the difference between a civil penalty of $5,000 and a non-criminal disposition? I don't know if you can answer that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So all of the fines would be related to the person that owns the property. Those would be in the most severe instances of abuse or neglect of the bylaw. That would not happen in a few instances or a few problems with the use of a rental. That is for really severe enforcement action that the town rarely ever takes and will be an action through the select board. There's a difference between the two just depending on the severity of what that action would be. I think in most cases when we get a complaint submitted to us, it would go to the building official, the building commissioner, and he would investigate the complaint to see, is this a neighborhood dispute that's just a civil matter, or is this something that actually reaches the level of a violation of a bylaw. Just in terms of engagement with this bylaw, I've been presenting it since December to multiple boards and committees. Honestly, we've had very little engagement in that process. So, if it's not perfect, I would really hope that you would reach out to the office to discuss the different issues, because we can always
I would
revise.
love to. I mean, my husband wrote to every single selectman and the town, not the moderator, but to Bud, I believe, last spring, and did not get one single reply when he was upset about the tax that was put in last year. So it's hard for us to have trust that you'll do this properly when we haven't really had the engagement that we've been hoping for, and trying to consider a lot of the people that pay taxes in this town that have rentals. They're not here tonight because they don't live in town, but they do pay taxes, and they provide the short-term occupancy tax. They don't take a lot of drain on the schools. Their kids aren't here. They are not here riding on the roads all winter. So I just feel like sometimes they're not really respected in this town, and I just don't think it's right. I guess. And my other question would be as to when it's going to go in effect, because if you're saying that you've already sent out letters. I haven't heard from any of our owners that have gotten one, but if that is true and they're getting in the next couple of days, it's just really difficult because we run our office, basically my husband and I, have 130 properties. If we're supposed to go out for 130 inspections before the summer season starts, it's really late notice for us. That's like a month's worth of work to do 130. I'm assuming you need somebody there, and a lot of times the owners are not going to be there, and they're going to be calling us to go open up places for them. So would they be in violation if they don't have it done before their first rental?
No, they would not be.
Okay.
So this was a new state mandate that occurred for us also. In January of this year, the new building code came out. This is what requires the annual inspection for safety compliance. There were some quite high-profile cases in Massachusetts and New Hampshire this year for lack of safety controls. So the building code was updated to make sure that we were looking at this from a safety standpoint. The first wave has to be done within the first year, so it has to be done by December. So that doesn't mean you have to do it during your rental season coming up. It's to December of this year. And of course, as we're starting this, we would allow some type of grace period so that everyone can get inspected and that it wouldn't affect your use of your property or renting for your income.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Gamble. I live at 15 Old Farm Lane, not too far from the school here. I have 3 children, moved here in 2014 specifically to send the kids to these great schools and to be part of this historic community. Grew up in Yarmouth myself. First, let me just state, if you have 130 rental units, you should be able to afford off that income to have each one of them inspected once a year. I don't think that's unreasonable in the least. I'm all for this amendment. I have the floor right now. My next door neighbor was a terrific family, just sold their house, moved to Mashpee, and it's turned into a short-term Airbnb advertised for guys golfing getaways. So we've had 2 weekends in the last month with rentals next door. I live in a very residential neighborhood. I know a dozen of my neighbors personally, thanks to COVID-19 shutdowns, know them very well. They're all residents that live there and have raised families in the houses. Now I have next door to me a commercial property essentially being run as an inn, advertised for 16 people per night can stay in the house with unlimited parking, including they can park on the street all they want. So my children now have new people moving in next to them, can be every single day of the year. It's certainly, looking at the calendar of my next door neighbors, Airbnb, it's every 2 or 3 days maximum. I'm going to be having golf guys in for the weekend. The first weekend that they rented it out, I wasn't home, but my neighbor had to call the police because of noise. This is not a very strong set of requirements at all. In fact, I think that having these requirements in our town would increase the value of someone who has short-term rentals, because they can advertise, our short-term rentals are inspected by our town every year. Our short-term rentals have reasonable parking. You won't have to park out on the street. Our short-term rentals have trash picked up, ooh boy, once a week. Wow. This is a great motion. I'm all for it. It's for the families and for the children of Cape Cod and Sandwich. I urge everyone to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Goldstein, 31 Deer Hollow Road. Just looking at some of the language, especially 12.5, it's not clear at all what any of these terms are defined as. What is a residential versus a, corporate event? What is a photo shoot? How many people are we talking about when we say no large-scale events? Can we have a 10-person wedding? Can we have a 20-person wedding? Can we have a 2-person wedding? There's nothing defined. It's just seems to be limitless in what you're saying can't be done, but there's no way to describe what is being defined here. Also problematic, why is there a two-day minimum, or two-day minimum? Is there a reason for that?
That was just from feedback that we heard from the community, that the one-night stays were very detrimental to the neighborhoods for those that were living there year-round. So it was a provision that we discussed with the planning board and the select board with, and eventually decided that they would move forward with that language for a minimum of 2 consecutive night stays. And then just in terms of your other question regarding the definitions, so in our zoning bylaw, we do define what these things, what these uses are. So when we look at, perhaps a wedding venue or an area that's marketed for corporate events, that's when we would say that that's going beyond the use of a short-term rental, and that's going into an actual commercial business function. So there's kind of checks and balances within our zoning bylaw to help us regulate this use.
So just to be clear, it's only for advertising then?
It's for the use of the property. So if we got a complaint saying that every weekend someone was hosting a wedding, that's not a one-off wedding for a family member. That's creating your property to be a wedding business, that you were a wedding venue and that you were hosting weddings every single weekend. That is not allowed in our residential districts. That is only allowed in commercial districts.
But how do you, still it's not defined then, I feel like, because there's...
It's defined in the zoning.
No, that, I understand that, but I'm trying to understand if you have 2 weeks in a row of weddings, how do you say that one is not okay and one is okay? I'm just confused how you're going to enforce this if some neighbor, like our previous person that was up here, is very angry about someone living next door to him. I just don't understand how you enforce all this.
So we do the same thing we enforce every zoning bylaw. We do investigations into it to see is this a use that currently exists. Investigations always take quite a long time because you're always trying to discern whether it's a legitimate violation of a bylaw or whether it's a neighborhood dispute because people don't like each other. So it takes time to get there to realize, is there an actual zoning bylaw violation or general bylaw violation? So it's not a quick decision that's made just because one event occurs.
Okay. And my last kind of point would be is the Sandwich Police Department, I think, posted the other night, they have noise ordinances. They have these things in place. I just don't see the need for additional restrictions on short-term rentals.
Barbara Lewis, 24 Manor Drive. Okay. I'm glad that I no longer have short-term rentals on East Sandwich Beach. I owned a number of properties on the ocean there, and through individually and through my corporation. And this is so restrictive that it basically would have put me out of business. I mean, people want to have weddings there. I mean, you can only interview them so much and find out what they're going to do there. The thing that really concerns me is that it's private property, and I believe someone earlier said that, we have a right to use our property as we want, within certain limitations. If it's not illegal, I don't think that I'm just glad that I don't have the properties anymore, because this would have put a damper on people's vacations here, the revenue to the town, and the revenue to me, to be able to pay what amounted to exorbitant taxes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leah Dager. Whoops. Woo. On Dillingham Avenue, and I do have short-term rentals near me, but we are here year-round. What is confusing me with this amendment article is that we've now added to it, and we've heard from the town at a minimum twice, if not 3 times, that it's not enforceable. So it seems to me like we've now made amendments that can't be enforced, that we know can't be enforced. So I would make a motion to table this, send it back, and have people restructure it so that it's something that makes sense for short-term rentals and for year-round residents. Do I hear a second?
Second. So we have a motion and a second. This is not debatable, so we will go right to the vote on this.
I motioned to table it. Right? Point of inquiry. I motioned to table this, so I don't need to do that in writing, correct?
No, you do not. And we have a second, so this would be a 2/3 majority, so we would need 2/3 of the votes to table the motion as amended, the article as amended. I got the word motion stuck in my head tonight, I don't know why. So I just want to clarify here. So to table the motion, that keeps it on the table for tonight. So somebody could bring that up for reconsideration at the end of the meeting. There is another option to indefinitely postpone. So if you'd like to redo your motion, we could do that. If you just want to table it for the rest of the night, you can. But I just wanted to clarify.
So I would motion to postpone it in that case indefinitely, and I would encourage people to come back with a more sensible approach that can be enforced by the town.
So we have a motion and a second. So this is actually a simple majority. So it is debatable if somebody would like to debate it. If not, we will. Oh. Mr. Picard.
Jeff Picard, 24 Captain Payne Road. I'm not going to debate it. I'm going to put a plug in. And I do appreciate, as a member of the planning board, all the comments tonight. But I will encourage you that when we come back, please come to the planning board public hearings. We need to hear from you then if we're going to get the correct wording. This is not the place to get it. And as was said earlier, many public hearings, we're looking at the reporter for the enterprise. That's the only person there. So please join us. We'd love to have you.
Mr. Moderator, left side.
Yeah. Mr. Hochter.
The question I would just ask of town staff and possibly the town attorney is, by indefinitely postponing this, what risks are we putting ourselves and the renters or the potential rentees at, as well as what would the default setting be by going postponing this? What rules are currently in place that we would be susceptible to by voting no on this?
So if we vote no on this tonight, this would not go into effect, so there would be no regulations regarding the use of short-term rentals. We could go through the process again, get more community feedback, draft another article and bring it back. So it would just be going into this rental season, there just would be, it would be this, maintaining the status quo, what we currently have, which is nothing in place. But I just want to be clear that the building code requirements for the annual inspection and the annual registration are in effect. That's not something we had to adopt, it's not something we had to vote upon. That is in effect and it's a state mandate. But all those regulations listed do not have to be in effect, and we would just remain status quo.
And by in turn with that is that there is no enforcement. So if there's an issue with a renter, or that somebody has a neighbor that's having a problem, there is no enforceable action that the town can take because there's no rules in place for short-term rentals currently.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Hi, Tracy Fisher, 6 Beachway Road. I do own a short-term rental. It is registered with the state. You get your short-term rental income from me every week. It is rented. Currently, based on the assessments, this is just an aside on the taxes, I have to rent mine every week of the summer in order to pay the taxes on the property, and it leaves me with a minuscule amount of money to reinvest in the property. So if the town keeps loading up on short-term rentals with 250 here, 4% there, you're gonna put all the short-term rentals out of business, and that will cost you income. But right now, one of the things that I know that protects me as the homeowner is that I do use Sand-Dollar Realty to get me my renters, and they screen people. I have the same people 3 years in a row so far. So I know that I'm not just getting fly-by-night groups of guys who want to go golfing and drink beer and sing while they're naked in the outdoor shower. I'm sorry if you enjoy that. So, you know, I think that people are rushing to hysteria in saying there'll be nothing we can do if anything happens. The police would still have to come to the house if there were noise complaints or if there were other things, and then I'm sure that you would call the homeowners in to discuss this or to do something, to litigate something. Thank you.
Andrew Rondo, 16 Seneca Lane. I have 3 kids. When my family, with 5 people in the family, my wife, 3 kids, when we go on vacation, we usually like to rent a place that has 2 bedrooms. We only take 1 car. I think we can revise the wording about parking to be a little more family friendly. I don't think every 2-bedroom rental needs 2 dedicated parking spaces. Thank you.
So is there any further discussion on the motion to indefinitely postpone?
It's my right, sorry. Deal with it. Chris, 40 Route 130. About how many rental units are there in the town of Sandwich?
Registered with the state, we have 752 units, but according to reporting companies, they say we have just over 1,000, so about 300 don't pay tax.
Okay, so 1,000 units in the town of Sandwich every week of the summer, and you said you got 30 or 40 complaints? That is a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah, and that's year-round, so. Yeah.
Do we have any further discussion on the motion to indefinitely postpone? Seeing none, I will open the voting. And this is a simple majority. 5 seconds. And the voting is closed. The motion to indefinitely postpone Article 19 passes. Article 20, Citizens Petition, Town Bylaw Amendment, ban alcohol containers less than 100 milliliters. I recognize Mr. Dan Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dan Tanner, Mill Road. Move that the town amend the Sandwich General Bylaws by adding a new section 4.20, banning the sale of alcoholic nips in containers equal to or less than 100 milliliters as printed in the warrant under Article 20.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second, a motion and a second.
What are the reasons to ask for a nip bottle ban? Well, for one thing, nip bottles encourage driving while intoxicated. Thus, they make our streets and walkways unsafe. And the litter is also a problem. 6 other Cape towns have banned nip bottles. All of them have fewer DWIs and less litter. No liquor store in any one of those towns has gone out of business. State law action is thwarted by the liquor industry and lobbying. The liquor industry is like the tobacco industry. It never runs out of lies in order to keep its profits up. The liquor industry has plenty of money. Today I got a direct mail in opposition to this. They have the money to do direct mail. Drinking drivers won't just buy larger bottles because they won't discard booze. Someone posted this article would ban quarter pints. It would not. A quarter pint is 118.3 milliliters. Most nip buyers are work crews in town. They get short lunch breaks and cannot easily go to another town to buy their nips. We can't expect police to solve all our problems, such as catching all the drinking drivers or litter throwers. This would be a step in the right direction, however. Liquor store owners have claimed that the ban may cost some store counter clerk jobs. I find that a very acceptable price weighed against the possibility of a child losing its life. And that statement implicitly concedes that the store will stay in business, so the owners are actually putting their profits over your safety. How very cynical. The bottles in the photo, some people say were staged. It was not staged. That's exactly how I found them. You have to take my word on that. There were 3 other bottles near it, but I couldn't step back far enough to take a picture of all 6 and make them too identifiable. This was on Quaker Meeting House Road at the corner of Pinkham. Our children walk to school on Quaker Meeting House Road. Think about safety and think about our neighborhood streets. The choice is yours, but the freedom, the choice, the convenience, and maybe a few counter clerk positions may come at the price of burying a child or 2. This is about safety versus money. Someone makes a little more money, and by the way, this flyer that came around only mentioned litter, never mentioned the fact that those nips contain alcoholic spirits, and they encourage people to drink them. They can discard them without being caught in violation of the open container law. Nips are a cynical industry response to open container laws that exist in 48 contiguous states. And this is the liquor industry's workaround. So once again, go ahead and continue to allow nips to be sold, possibly bury a child or 2. Thank you.
So I just want, before we have more discussion, I just want to add, we debated this very recently in a town meeting. I believe it was back in the spring last year. So a lot of these arguments are fresh. So I encourage people to avoid redundancy. And you know, if someone has made the same argument, let's try to keep it moving, because we have heard them. But any further discussion, please.
Okay, thank you. Bert Fisher, 163 Catuit Road. And knowing that I'm on Catuit Road, you can imagine I see quite a few of these nip bottles. Being on the most major road in the town, most major as far as businesses are concerned. So I see the picture that he has up there. I thought he might have taken it on my property, because that's what it looks like. Not everyone here lives on Gully Lane, and not everyone here lives on John Ewer Road, and so you don't have to deal with that. So, you know, when you're placing a vote today or this evening, I would hope that you would consider those of us that are on more major roads and consider how much the litter is a fairly major problem. Now, I do like to eat sometimes when I am in the car, and I'm somewhat of a chocoholic, but I don't take my Reese's Pieces wrappers and throw them out onto the road. And although I don't think a police officer is going to pull me over for eating Reese's Pieces, I do understand I'm not going to remake the argument on safety and drinking and driving. That's been already made. As a teacher, I really care about kids, and so the part about drunk driving really does have an effect as far as I am concerned. Thank you very much.
Chris Thompson, 40 Route 130. I guess you could call that a main road. I see nips all the time. It happens, it's your property, pick it up. It sucks that people are rude and will throw things out of their car. They do it with cigarette butts, they do it with Dunkin' Donuts cups and napkins and every other thing you can think of. So to say that litter is the big problem here is kind of ridiculous. Also, to say that liberty and freedom are a problem is a bit ridiculous. Those who would sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither and usually receive neither. Who was it that said that again? Ben Franklin. Yeah, good, there you go. Furthermore, Danny Tanner here posted on Facebook all of the wonderful things he said here earlier tonight, probably 3 days ago, maybe 4 days ago. Which was it, Dan? You know, none of which had citation for the quotes he made about fewer drunk drivers or really anything that he mentioned. So it talks about lying from the liquor business, had nothing to back up what he was stating. Furthermore, the mailer was most likely from a local liquor store who employs town residents. Okay, so a resident losing their job, it matters. Someone that's retired won't really care about that, but I know a lot of people that do. So by voting to possibly have someone lose their job, that's a problem too. Maybe we should all just do a little bit better about not throwing our stuff out and not stopping people from buying something. You know, drinking and driving is already a bad thing. Let's do better at that. But not take away people's right to choose something, which seems to be what you are for today. And I'm asking everybody to be against stopping people's right to choose and just be better people in general.
George Silver from 30 Pierre Veneer Drive. People probably doesn't know this, but alcohol is a drug, just like any other drugs. And because of that, we should not help and encourage these people just walking into the drugstore and be right there on the counter, making them easy, just walk in and out. Meanwhile, you know, if we want something else, we have to go to the back of the store. It's just like a pharmacy. You have old people going to the back of the pharmacy, get their own prescription. Meanwhile, somebody walks in and gets cigarettes right there in front, you know, nearby. So we sort of discourage. Thank you.
Hi, Dennis Connery, Beach Plum Circle. Unfortunately, people are always going to misuse alcohol. Changing the container size will have no effect on this. So I guess the question is, do you really think that banning miniature alcohol bottles will stop some consumers from breaking the law and littering? Simple logic will tell you no. These people will continue to break the law either by discarding a larger bottle bought here in Sandwich or driving to a neighboring town and discarding the smaller bottle bought there. The retailers did a cleanup in March. We had over 20 volunteers and picked up 25 to 30 bags of trash along our roadways and public areas. Sure, we found miniature nip bottles, but we also found dunking packaging, scratch-offs, soda cans, chip bags, marijuana containers, packaging and trash of all sorts. Maybe it's a day like today, Cinco de Mayo. You want one margarita to celebrate the occasion. Or maybe you're someone who occasionally enjoys a martini or Manhattan, but doesn't want to commit to a larger bottle of alcohol. A vote yes would effectively be a self-imposed price increase. Don't you think we've seen enough price increases lately? We've had the exact same article last year. There was a clear answer from the voters to not ban this container. Why are we doing this again? Let's respect what the voters decided 12 months ago. Please vote against this measure to protect your local businesses and to protect consumer choice. Thank you for your time.
And I just want to remind all speakers to address town meeting. Do not address specific members. And if you do want to speak, please speak from the podium and not from your seat. Please.
Hello, Chanta DeSanti, 192 Main Street. I think I may be the only person in the room here who has the pleasure of being the distributorship of the wine and spirits business here in Massachusetts, though, believe it or not, I do not sell nips. This, though, gives me a really unique kind of perspective because I work in towns that have banned nips and towns that have not banned nips. And the one thing that seems to really echo in all the towns that ban nips is that the garbage just moved. We're not solving a problem that is a big problem, which is people littering. That's disgusting. We're just moving it to someone else's yard. So it really may suck that we particularly are having a large visibility at times in certain areas of nips and cigarettes and Dunkin' Donuts cups, but by allowing other towns around us to still sell nips and ban it in ours, all we're doing is giving businesses outside of our own town an opportunity that the businesses in our town will no longer have. The average nip makes someone about 7 to 12 cents. That's a very, very small amount of money, which, by the way, I found so much insulting to say that the liquor industry puts dollars before public safety, because 7 and 12 cents is tiny. What they are relying on there is the other things people are buying when they walk into the store that stop, when nips stop. There's no more lottery. There's no buying a bag of chips. And those are the things that actually create jobs and keep people in our community and spending money in our community. This may sound like a very small problem, but it has bigger consequences. Banning nips in our town would be like telling Dunkin' Donuts they can no longer give to-go cups because people throw them out their windows. You're punishing the responsible consumer in this instance, and you're punishing the shop itself. People are just going to go outside of town so they can get a to-go coffee. Thank you so much for your time.
Riley Fortin, 36 Atkins Road. This is not a liquor store problem, it's a people problem. It is the people that will throw them out the window. They have no care for our environment. They don't respect it. And why should the liquor store employees and the owners have to pay for it when it's the buyer's problem? Thank you.
Jonathan Finn, Chipman Road. I'd like to make a motion to move the question.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All right. So we do need 2/3 for that. And it's not debatable, so as soon as you bring the question up, we will vote on it. We are voting on moving the question. pending discussion. Thank you. Very helpful. Voting is open. Just a reminder, it is a 2/3. Five seconds. Voting is closed. The motion to move the question has passed. So now we will be voting on the main motion and the main article. I got motion on the brain here, motion sickness, if you will. We're going to, thank you. We're going to vote on Article 20, Town Bylaw Amendment, and this is a simple majority. Voting is open. So yes would pass the vote, would pass the bylaw. No would deny it, would oppose it, knock it down. Five seconds. Voting is closed. The motion fails. Article 22, petition, skip the stuff ordinance, eating utensils, takeaway containers, etc.
Hello, I'm Jody Sastry, 21 Marshview Circle. I move that the town adopt a skip the stuff general bylaw restricting the provision of takeaway orders unless requested by the customer, and replacing the word city with the word town at the bottom of page 23 as printed in the warrant under Article 21.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right.
You have the
Please.
presentation? Thank you. Okay, as I said, I'm Jody Sastry of 21 Marshview Circle. I'm here with Carla Miller.
Carla Miller, 202 Old County Road.
And we're here to introduce our proposed bylaw called Skip the Stuff. Next slide, please. We are volunteers with the Cape and Islands chapter of the Surfrider Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting our ocean, beaches, and waterways. One of the ways we do that is through regular beach cleanups each year throughout the Cape and Islands. At our most recent beach cleanup, we removed 22 pounds of trash, a reminder of how much waste ends up in our beautiful seashore. We are introducing Skip the Stuff as a common sense measure that would benefit our community in 3 key ways. Next slide, please. The bylaw simply requires that items like plastic utensils, straws, and condiment packets are not automatically included in takeout and delivery orders. Instead, customers can ask for them if they need them. To be clear, this is not a ban. These items are still available just upon request. Why does this matter? Restaurants in the United States spend more than $19 billion a year on disposable foodware, and that number was recorded before the pandemic, so we can estimate that that has only gone up. Reducing unnecessary distribution of single-use items can help restaurants cut costs. For consumers, it's a choice, not a ban. Most of us end up with a pile of plastic utensils we get from takeout orders that we plan on eating at home. So it either gets thrown out or we stuff it in a drawer. So this bylaw simply addresses that unnecessary waste. And for the town of Sandwich, it helps reduce litter and waste management costs. Local governments spend millions of dollars annually on waste collection and cleanup. Many of the items we find at our beach cleanup
like unused plastic utensils and straws, could be avoided altogether with this simple change. If you need it, you just ask. If you don't, let's skip the stuff. Next slide. We believe this is a small, easy to implement measure that can lead to real benefits for our local businesses and the community as a whole. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Do you have more? No?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion?
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Eileen Stars, Marshview Circle. Well, here we are again. Since 2019, we have been standing up to groups and individuals who wish to ban plastic bottles and containers. Last year, the largest number yet stood against banning these items. So I think residents are growing increasingly tired of these bans. This year's petition requires customers to ask for plastic utensils, napkins, and straws. And if you don't ask for them, you don't get them. How many people in town will know to ask for these items? A big problem with the upcoming summer season will be the visitors to town, who will certainly not have a clue to ask for them. They will buy their takeout and go to the canal, the beach, or elsewhere, open the bag and wonder, where are the utensils and napkins? Welcome to Sandwich. Here come the bad restaurant reviews. Our businesses in town already provide only the number of items needed for an order. Of course, they want to keep their costs to a minimum. Therefore, this petition seems completely unnecessary and only causes confusion for the restaurant owners and the customers. Further, this seeks to punish not just owners, but also third-party delivery services such as DoorDash. There would be fines imposed on either the owner or the delivery service, depending on the circumstances. Might this cause some delivery services to stop operating in Sandwich? Lastly, this petition calls for the health department to enforce the requested changes. I think they have more important things to do than to count napkins in takeout orders and hand out fines of up to $250 for one extra. Let's once again exercise common sense and say no to this overburdensome and unenforceable petition. Please vote no on this article.
Hi, Brandon Babiars, 4 Barnside Lane. I've owned, operated, managed, worked in restaurants in and around Sandwich for about 25 years. And 5-6 years ago, the plastic stuff started coming up. I'm personally old enough to remember when we switched off of paper to save the rainforest and went to plastic. So I think actually food service establishments have tried really hard to provide something that's more eco-friendly. We had the corn plastic cups that were touted as compostable that in reality weren't. We buy bamboo, we buy all different types of things. I think one huge problem here is different groups come in all the time to these town meetings and they put these bylaws up on the board, but nobody ever talks to the restaurants about the practical application. Simple fact of the matter is there's no efficient, reliable, accessible, and affordable answer to single-use plastics at this moment. I think if all of these organizations around the country banded together, they could work towards that and maybe actually really change things. But in the meantime, all you're doing is giving people another reason to complain, another reason to leave a negative review. This town pretty much voted for $2 million to a town hall that is not necessarily used as a town hall. We just protected our short-term rental. We should also protect our restaurants and food service establishments because they have the same visitors. They don't have people who are coming here on airplanes with a reusable fork, knife, and spoon in their suitcase. If they're gonna go to the canal, they need some way to be able to eat it. More restaurants and food service establishments than you would think actually have just a self-service counter where people already choose whether or not. I would motion to table indefinitely all bans involving single-use plastic until a time where an efficient, affordable, and accessible alternative is available.
So we can only deal with the article today. We can't do future.
I'm going to move to indefinitely table Article 21, the Skip the Stuff ordinance. Thank you. I'm going to motion to indefinitely postpone the Skip the Stuff ordinance, as it would add undue stress to an already stressed industry.
Second. We have a motion and a second.
Thank you.
It is debatable, so if we have any debate on the motion to indefinitely postpone.
I think there's a misunderstanding. I heard ban numerous times. There is no ban. That is not what this is stating. So let's be clear on the wording and what we're proposing here. It's a common sense measure. You ask for utensils or you don't. And if you do, you get them. If you don't get them. This is pretty common sense. There are lots of jurisdictions throughout the country that have already implemented this. This is going to be a money saver for a restaurant with some simple training, some simple change management over time. This is not burdening. It's not burdensome. It does allow people like me who get annoyed by the 500 pieces of additional things I don't need to ask for them. And it also reduces waste. It's a small step. We're not asking for bans. This has nothing to do with single-use plastic. It has to do with money. It doesn't. It's pretty simple. That's our position.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to indefinitely postpone?
If I might, Mr. Moderator, just to reply to what the petitioner said, it would be a ban if you don't know to ask for these items. Then it is a ban for you because you don't get the items.
Not to do.
Do I have a chance to rebut that?
Please.
First of all, someone said we didn't ask the restaurants. I called a few restaurants. Sandwich Enterprise called 5. It's written right here in the article. Cafe Chew owner James Barber said he's supportive of the cause. JD's, I'm not going to mention Captain Scott's, obviously, JD's and the local, they said they've already do not automatically give customers utensils unless they ask for them. I spoke to Seafood Sam's, they said the same. They said we're already all doing this. And there will be a sign at the register that says we will support that. Surfrider has funds to support that. There's no,
Yeah.
okay.
We're debating the motion to indefinitely postpone. Also, anybody that does wish to speak, I would ask you to come just a little closer. The petitioners could allow them to come forward. So is there any further discussion on the motion to indefinitely postpone? Then seeing none, we will take a vote to indefinitely postpone, and that is a simple majority. Gotta love technology. The voting is open. Five seconds. Voting is closed. And the motion to indefinitely postpone passes. Article 22, town election and ballot question.
Move to adjourn to the town elections on May 8th, 2025.
Second. Then I will take a motion to dissolve town meeting, and I will take the second from the floor and a vote from the floor and voice vote. This meeting is adjourned.